Welcome, everybody, or welcome back. This is Nikki with Homeschool Knockouts. This is your ultimate homeschool online hangout, baby, where we tackle those homeschool challenges like real champs. So, in today's video, we are going to be reviewing Writing and Rhetoric, Book 2, Narrative 1. Let's get started. This is going to be a very comprehensive review, so please take notes. And if this video you think is too long, if it's too long for you, I do have timestamps down below in the description box. And I have it broken down into multiple categories, starting with the introduction to the curriculum. I'm going to give you a content overview, which will really be the longest part of the video. And then I'm going to talk about the materials that you'll need, teacher involvement, the target audience, the price, additional resources that you might need, benefits and drawbacks, and my final thoughts. Okay, that's a lot. And we're going to be thorough so you can make an informed decision about this curriculum and see if it's the best fit for your family. So let's dive in and unpack all of this. Okay, so you want to know something about writing and rhetoric. So let's just jump into the introduction. Over here, now here will be your little handy guide for each category breakdown coming up. So first of all, this program is a 12-book series. And you see here on the back of every book, we'll have all the books and then the corresponding grade levels. Okay, sorry, I have a green screen behind me, and so it's green on here. So you see little, at the beginning of the book, they have a pyramid of all the books in the series, and then they have the corresponding grades. This is just a suggestion because you guys know from my previous video, I started my 6th grader with book 1. And in that video, I show you how to like kind of plow through and get through and then get them caught up to grade level, right? Okay, so you see where you are here, okay? Now, if you are new to the Writing and Rhetoric curriculum, I do recommend that you read the introduction so you can understand the mindset with this book. There is a mindset, and if you understand it, then a lot of things in the book will make sense to you. So take a minute just to read that, especially as you're getting started. They have a section here on getting started because a lot of us don't know what rhetoric is, okay? The beginning pages are important if this curriculum is new to you, okay? So it's going to give you examples of what you're doing and what the program, I always say that word wrong. So we're still at the beginning of the book, okay? I recommend that you read this page here so you can get a good idea of what the book is about. Now, for those of you who have to report your work to like an online charter or homeschool charter, an umbrella school, or to the state, this page is great for being able to jot down everything to show that what you've been doing with your child, right? If you can't put it in your own words, take the objectives and then some of this over here, and then you can put that in your report for your school, your charter, or for the state, okay? But anyway, so 12-book series, and students start by crafting narratives because who doesn't like a good story, right? And then they start to climb the literary ladder. So they're tackling expository, diving into descriptive, and then finally getting to that daunting task of persuasive writing. This is the trajectory of the entire book series. Now, writing and rhetoric. We got the writing part, but what does rhetoric mean? Now, rhetoric just means to write well and speak persuasively. And the rhetoric comes into play when you have the speak it or elocution exercises in the book. Okay. So basically, in a nutshell, in book 2, narrative 1, your kiddos are learning how to imitate the greats. So think of this book as learning how to cook by following Julia Child's recipes, and then you start experimenting with your own weird concoctions, but potentially delicious flavor combos. That's what we're doing here. We are imitating the greats. So how does this measure up? Well, let's delve into the details and find out. So this is our content overview. I'm going to go over the table of contents and then the first couple of pages and then the pacing guide for this. And then I'll show you a couple of the lessons throughout the book, mainly the first couple of lessons, maybe one or two in the middle, and then some in the end so you can see the trajectory of this book. So we have narrative 1 and we have our table of contents. Now you see here straight from the rip, a typical teaching week. It is worth your time to look at that. And we will look at that once we go over the table of contents. We have the introduction to students, the typical stuff. I'm more concerned with the teaching week and the introduction, okay? Here we have our lessons. There are 10 of them. Think of them as your chapters, okay? And we have all kinds of stories. That's your first lesson, a long parable and a short parable. And you'll see that you'll have the name of the story that's going to correspond to that lesson. You have the main idea with parables. We're still with parables, right? And then we start getting in the middle of the book, we start getting into dialogue, okay? And we're bringing in, some of our Greek mythology. We're on description next, and then combining dialogue and description. Part 1. And then we have, to wrap up, lesson 8, we have combining dialogue and description, part 2, Romulus and Remus. And then lesson 9, conflict, the middle of the story, Alexander and Bucephalus. And then lesson 10, more practice with story middles. And then you have some examples of the stories here. And then elocution instructions, which will tell you how to work on speaking, and then a rubric if you care to use a rubric. Okay, don't skip the front of the book, y'all. So the front of the book has your typical teaching week, okay? Now you'll notice it stops at day 4, okay? But there are 5 days in a week, or 7 days, depending on what kind of homeschool you are. See, there's nothing on the back here. It stops at day 4, okay? So listen, you see here, day 1, okay? This is what you're doing for day 1. You're not doing any writing on day 1, okay? You're reading about the story, the lesson that you're going to be learning for that chapter, and then you're going to be doing the narrative, which is called tell it back, and then you'll be doing the talk about it, and then finally the go deeper. That is day 1. You have not picked up a pencil unless you're doing go deeper, okay? And then you're just writing, like you're just answering like something with an A, B, or C, or 1, 2, 3. You're not actually composing anything at all. Day 2, okay? Day 2 is all about revisiting the story. How much did you remember? How much working memory do you have? Okay. Then you are going through the writing time exercises. So this is where you start getting the little writing chops into gear. Day 3. This is showtime for your kids. This is their chance to show you or your siblings or grandma, grandpa, meemaw, anyone, what they've learned and all the work they've been doing the last couple of days, revising, amplifying, whatever, summarizing. Now they get to put that into action and then they can show their work. Okay. So this is their chance to shine. It's also their chance to work on their elocution, their speaking skills, because remember, rhetoric means to write well and speak persuasively. You can't speak persuasively if you're tumbling and stumbling over all your sentences like I am right now. Day 4 is kind of your wild card. I used 5 or 6 days, depending on the child and the writing assignment, because I had the child that didn't like to write. Now my child loved the curriculum. But day 4 is your wild card, right? So that's what a typical teaching week looks like for some people. Now, you guys know from my previous videos, sometimes I have day 5, day 6, day 7. Let's see what a typical teaching week looks like in action. And crack open lesson 1. All right, guys, I'm just going to hold the book up because my webcam kind of sucks right now. But listen, okay, so I'm going to show you some of the beginning lessons, the middle lessons, and the end lessons, so you can see how the book advances throughout. Okay, lesson 1 starts with a lesson, okay? And this lesson is telling you about all kinds of stories because your child is going to be learning about a lot of stories. Now, one thing that you'll notice in the lessons or the stories, you'll have your bolded words. This will be your vocabulary, because remember, writing and rhetoric is like a language arts program. There's a little bit of grammar, there's some reading comprehension, there's writing, of course, there's speaking, and there's vocabulary, to name a few. So this is the sprinkling of the vocabulary, and you'll see it down at the bottom, okay? You'll also notice that the beginning of each lesson has some kind of picture, and the pictures are usually pretty cool. So in the pictures, kind of tie in to the lesson, okay? Now for lesson 1, they're just trying to get your child started with, what makes a story. Let me stand up for you guys. Now I have the teacher edition, and you'll see, and I'm starting with the teacher edition so you can decide whether you really need to get the teacher edition. You do. So it's just breaking down all just different types of stories, right? And you'll see that you'll have some bolded words, bolded vocabulary words, okay? Now, because there was no story for lesson 1, your tell it back or your narration is really just that lesson that you just covered, okay? So you see here, the narration, the tell it back, that's what it's asking. So you're not telling the story yet, not for lesson 1. This is easing you into the curriculum. Then you have your talk about it, which is your comprehension questions, guys. Just your comprehension questions. And then you see some of the teacher notes that are in, they're shaded. And then you see TE for teacher edition. Okay, so that would be in your book, but not your child's book. Okay, and then you have your go deeper, and that's what it looks like. Okay, so for example, it says each of these narratives represents a certain type of story. Label the following paragraphs as fable, da, 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 da. So you're not really doing any writing. You are just answering questions. So you haven't broken out into composing anything yet, okay? Now, and then that continues on. And then more exercises. It's just introducing your child to all kinds of stories. What's a fable? What's a parable? What's a fairy tale? You have more stories and then examples of what that story is. You have Black Beauty, the myth of the Minotaur. So you have myths. So lesson 1 is introducing your child to parables, fairy tales, fables, myths, and something else. Okay. And then you get a little bit of speak it. Okay. And that's what that looks like. So that was lesson 1. So I'm just trying to whet your appetite and show you what to expect from the jump. Now, okay, so let's take a peek at lesson 3. Okay, now I still have the teacher edition, and you'll see at the beginning, it'll give you some notes, and mine is my lipstick that I just smudged on here. You'll have some notes for what's going on in this lesson, okay? Remember, if you have to take notes for what you're teaching to report back to an institution, the state, or school, that's your little cheat sheet, okay? So lesson 3. So remember, each lesson will either start with the lesson or the point of that lesson or a story. So in this case, it is starting with what the lesson is. And the lesson is on short parables. So it's just short reading on what a short parable is, right? Okay. So that was a brief little lesson. And then we have our story, always accompanied by a picture, which that in and of itself, you can have a little discussion about. But you have your story. Now, here's something I want you to notice. This is a secular curriculum, but it does have sprinklings of biblical verses and scriptures throughout, like this one here, Luke 12:16 through 21. Now, I'm a secular homeschooler. This does not bother me. The inclusion of scripture or verses really helps to add to the lesson. It's not in any way proselytizing. So if that is your concern, do not worry about that. So with that said, I wanted you to know about that. So you have your story for this lesson. Okay. It's a short story, right? So after you have your story, after you've read the story or your child has read the story, then your child is going to narrate it back to you, or tell it back, right? Okay. And it's going to be with an oral narration. For every story, you're always giving the first sentence to get you started, okay? Because they want you to succeed. And then once you're done with your oral narration, you will have your written. You'll have your written narration, okay? Now remember, I have the teacher check, so everything that you see that's shaded is our notes or answers, okay? So this is your written narration. You can see the whole question, okay? And that's what it looks like. So by the time your child has done oral and written narration, they should know the story pretty well. And then once you've done that, you're going to move over to talk about it. Basically, your reading comprehension questions. So that's the first question. And then you have several more. So I want you to see what kind of questions that they're asking, okay? Now, they do say the word God, but it's not proselytizing, okay? And then once you're done with the talk about it, you go into the go deeper, okay? And sometimes, well, most times to go deeper, that will be the first time you pull out a pen or pencil and answer questions. And go deeper is continued on the back right here, okay? And that's day one. That's day one. Day two. Remember, day one is all the talking, the reading, and discussion. Day two starts your writing exercises. So here we are, writing time. Writing time. I need to work on my elocution. Writing time. So let's check it out. You have writing time. And that's the start of your writing, okay? And in this lesson, it starts with copy work. Now you see it's just one sentence, you know, it's like, oh, that's really nothing. But look at that sentence. Look at the commas and the quotations, okay? Does your child know whether the comma goes before or after the quotation? Or what about the period? Does it go in front of the quotation or at the end of the quotation? So those little small details, that's why you're just getting one sentence. Those details add up. Now you're going into dictation. This is where you really want your teacher guide, okay? Because all the dictation exercises are in the teacher guide, not the student guide, okay? Now, it's just 3 sentences, but it does wrap up, okay? And you see there's always illustrations throughout the book, okay? After your dictation, you have your sentence play. And a lot of times the sentence play is you're just taking that sentence and you're rewriting it so many different ways, changing the subject, the verb. It just depends on what that lesson is. Okay. We have the copiousness, which is really your grammar. And you'll see terms like synonym, noun, adjective. That's how you know you're in your grammar section. And this will go on for a bit, okay? And the exercises vary with you writing things out and then choosing things, you know, multiple choice. It varies, okay? And that's the rest of copiousness. So you see the variety of exercises for the grammar, okay? Now, and this is a long writing section. So I would break this section up into 3 days. So, 2 days. So it would be day 2 and day 3 because there are a lot of writing. Well, there's a lot of grammar and writing. So I would break that up into 2 days. That would be just me. You can do obviously whatever you like. Now, the next section is amplification. So it tells you about amplification. It describes what it is. And then you're given the original story from the lesson. And then you're off to amplify that story. Okay. And in the teacher book, it will give you a sample story of what that would look like. Okay. And there's more writing on the back for your child to finish. So your child is given ample room to write their assignments. And then continuing with another writing exercise, you have more. Okay. So lesson 3 is writing heavy. Okay. And then day 3 or day 4 or day 5, depending on how you want to chop this up, is your Speak It. Oh, not that part. Sorry. Your Speak It section. And this is reverse narration, okay? Which, let me just show it to you better. Sorry, guys, I'm going to get that webcam. I just don't have a stick anymore to hold the webcam, so I have to use my hand. So this is your reverse narration for your Speak It or your rhetoric section, okay? And that's what that looks like. And it's nothing demanding or heavy, okay? And then for you, the teacher, you have, like teacher notes at the end, and it tells you how you can kind of guide the discussions that you're going to have with your child when you do the talk about a section, okay? Okay. All right. So that's a typical week, okay? So that was lesson 3. I know this video is getting a little long. So let's move to the middle of the book. We are going to be looking at lesson 6, okay? Here, I'll show you what my child's stuff looks like. So this is what the lesson is about. Description, okay? Another Greek myth. And you have about 2 pages of text to read. You do have your first little vocabulary for this lesson right here. And the lesson continues, okay? So that's your lesson for lesson 6. So you see how things are ramping up? Now let's go into the story. So the story is Athena and Arachne, okay? Now, with my son, he started breaking down text, which is why you see all the different colors. But that could be something I talk about in another video. But it's not something that the book tells you to do. All right, so you have your story, okay? You have a Greek story, right? And you also have your illustration. Remember, there's always a picture that goes with the story, especially for our visual learners, okay? And it just adds visual interest, okay? Continuing the story with a little bit of vocabulary thrown in there. Now, we finish the story, and then we move on to our tell it back, which is our narration. And we always start with oral narration. And you're giving the first sentence to get you started right here, okay? And then you have a couple little exercises. Well, one little exercise to do. And then you go to your written narration, okay? Your written narration. Then once you're done with that, you have your talk about it, okay? And the one thing I like about this writing program is that all the sections, your child knows what's coming next, okay? So you have your talk about it. In this case, you have 3 discussion questions, not that many. And then you have your go deeper. And then for day 2, we're going into writing time, okay? And then your grammar, which is your copiousness. And then I'm going to go through this quickly so we can get to the end of the book. And then you have your amplification with description, okay? And all you're doing with amplification, you are rewriting the story and adding a lot more to it, okay? And then you have your Speak It for the last day, okay? Now look at the Speak It. This one is talking about researching a type of spider because remember, Athena, was weaving and it was the spider. So the Speak It exercise ties in with the story, okay? And then you have lesson 7, okay? So that's what middle of the book looks like. You see how it's revving up. Let's look at the last lesson in the book. So you can compare the first lesson to the last lesson or lesson 10. All right, so here are your notes for what your teacher notes, okay? And then lesson 10, which is more practice with story middles, okay? The whole point with book 3, narrative 1, is learning how to craft stories with dialogue, description, amplification, how to write the middle of the story, how to write the ending of the story, how to write the beginning of the story. What are those elements like? Okay, so here's your story, the Johnny cake, and there's your beautiful illustration, right? And then there's the story, more stories, and then here are some notes for you to help with the writing task that is to follow. Now you see, this is the last lesson of the book. You don't have the the talk about it, the tell it back. You don't have the sentence play. You don't have the writing time with the copy work, the dictation. You don't have any of that. The goal of the last lesson is just pure writing. Okay. So you got your Johnny Cake story that you're going to be writing. Look at all of these pages your child's going to be writing. Okay. And then you have the second story. Okay. The sausage. Here are your notes, because your child is going to write the sausage. They're going to amplify it, because that's what they've been doing the whole book series, okay? And then the third and final story. So they have that story and then their own take on it with some more pages. And then some elocution instructions for how to speak, okay? And this one is, I think they're talking about like just your posture, you know, the body as a voice in addition to your voice as a voice. And then if you just want to see the end, you have a glossary, very short glossary with the new concepts, okay? And you have your vocabulary builder. And then they just prep you for the next book. And that's it. That is a long content overview, but I want it to be thorough. So let's fly through the other sections, okay? Let's talk about materials that you will need. Now, you saw that I used these two books, the Teacher's Edition and the Student Text, okay? There is an audio an option. It is an MP3 file. Now, back when I was using this, we actually had a physical CD. I don't know if they still do the CDs anymore. I didn't see it on Rainbow Resource where I would get some of my my learning materials. It is optional, and it is available. Now, with the audio option, you will get all the stories, dictations, you get a lot of that, but it's not a substitute for the actual book, because you'll see in the book kind of has some instructions and things like that that's not on the audio, but it will help you out a lot if you had it, if you're trying to lighten your load, but it's not a substitute for you, okay? You saw in the Teacher's Edition, the Teacher's Edition is just identical to the student text with the overprinted answers on top. That's the only difference, okay? So there you go. All right, now let's move on to teacher involvement. Now, having a teacher involved in this program is key. Y'all, this is not a solo flight. Absolutely not. Now, the manual, although it's just like the student text with the overprinted answers and things like that, it does have the dictation. It has notes at the beginning of the lesson and at the end of the lesson. And it has suggested answers for some of the questions. So you really do want to have that, okay? Day one is intensive because you're reading the story, you're having discussion questions, you're having your go deeper, and all of that is one-on-one with you and your child or your student. So you are going to be involved. But then when you get to like day 2 or day 3, with the exception of the dictation, it's not quite as involved. Now, as much as you need to be there to talk and have the discussions, the lessons are actually pretty easy. They're really straight and to the point. It's not a lot of prep at all. It's really low prep. So all you need to do is just quickly grab your book and then look at the bolded part, the shaded part about, okay, lesson 2. Okay, I got 10 minutes before we start writing. Let me see what I have to teach. And then read this really quickly. Get a gist, okay? Maybe quickly scan the lesson that you're going to be doing. And then if you want to, you can look at the story or you can read it for the first time with your child. But all you're doing is just reading those little notes or that lesson to see what that whole lesson is going to be about, for the whole week. That's it. So the first day you're involved, but then after that, your child can kind of take the reins. And then toward the end, when you have the speak at, you're not actively involved in terms of having to prep and do a lot of stuff, but you do need to be present so you can hear your child do the speak it activity. So there is teacher involvement. It is I would say it's mid-level effort. Okay, low prep, but you do need to be there for a number of activities. Okay, target audience. So this book says that the target audience is grades 3 through 4. Or not. I had my sixth grader use this book. I started him on book 1, and then we zoomed through book 2 and 3. So it is for whomever you want to put the book in front of, and you can make it work. You can chop up the book however you want. For my older student, we didn't do the grammar because my child was fine with grammar. We just focused on the writing exercises and the dialogue, like the day 1 and day 2 things, or the first part of day 2. So you can chop it up any way you want to, but that's their intended audience, grades 3 through 4. My youngest child hated writing. This was by far his favorite writing curriculum. So you can't even say it's for kids who just love to write or kids who don't like to write. It's a very well-rounded writing curriculum. So the target audience is really any child you put the book in front of. There's something for visual kids. There are things for audio kids. There covers a number of different learning styles. So okay, let's move on. Okay, price. Now, while this is not the cheapest curriculum on the market, it is well worth the money to get this curriculum. Now, at the time of this video, this is December 2023, okay? 2023, Writing and Rhetoric, the student book was $19.95 on Amazon and $17 on Rainbow Resource. And then if you went to the Amazon Marketplace or like Facebook Marketplace, I saw it anywhere from $5 to like $8 used. And when it was used, it was like the child just wrote their name on the cover and then that was it. Excellent condition. For the teacher text, basically the same price. It was $19.95 on Amazon, $17.05 on Rainbow Resource, and about $6 to $8 on the used websites like Amazon Marketplace and Facebook Marketplace. Now, they also have, at least on Rainbow Resource, they have a package where you get the teacher edition, the student edition, and an audio file, not the CD, but the file, all 3 for $32.95. And I believe that was on Rainbow Resource. So they do have a package where you can buy all of those. So typically you're using 1 book a semester. So just know that if you're getting 2 books a semester, that's for 1 semester, and then the next semester you need to buy 2 books again. Okay. Okay, additional resources. So in the materials I told you about the CD or the audio file, that would be an additional resource. Remember, on that audio file or CD, they have the dictation, the stories. They have all of that good stuff on there. It is not a substitute for you, however, but it is there. Additional resources. I don't know if this is still around, but I think I saw this last year. Homeschool Planet, which they offer a digital homeschool planner. They had the pre-made lesson plans on the digital planner. So all you had to do is pull up your planner, and it would have Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, however many days you wanted to structure it. They would have all the lessons there printed, ready for you to go. So there was like no thinking involved. It's already there. I know they offer a 30-day free trial. At least back in the day. I'm not affiliated with them, but I do remember seeing that they had writing and rhetoric lessons on there. So you might want to check that out. Okay, so let's move on. Okay, benefits and drawbacks. Okay, so let's start with the benefits. This curriculum is very engaging. It caters to a lot of different learning styles, okay? And it really teaches your child how to craft a story. It takes them from the beginning of a story all the way to the end, and then how to craft it in the middle. It's very, I haven't seen anything like that goes into that much detail, and it's fun along the way. You really get to get the big picture and then the small picture approach to how to do narrative writing. Another benefit is that The writing models in these books tip their hat to historical periods. So, like books 1 and 2, they bring ancient Greek and Rome into your living room, and then like books 3 kind of sails into the Roman Empire, and then book 4 you start jousting into the Middle Ages. So, I like that it has time periods because if you're doing history, if you want to kind of tie that in, then that's just great. I mean, that's just a great way to go deeper into your material. Okay, so benefits. Another benefit is your child gets to work on their creative writing skills and their technical skills. So there's a good little balance between the two, which I think is great. Now, drawbacks. It does require teacher involvement, especially on day 1. Okay, day 2 and 3, just a little bit, but you're still going to be a little hands on. Okay, and then by the time you get to the speaking exercises, you're back in the mix with your child. So there is involvement going on. Even if you have the CDs to play the stories, the dictation and all of that, you still need to be present to help out. Okay. So it's not use the audio and let that teach the kid. It really doesn't work that way. And you'll see if you get the audio. Okay. Another drawback is your child might get tired of the ancient Greek and Roman period. That was my child. Eventually, he wanted to do stories on World War II or on dragons, So, Arachne and Athena and Poseidon and Hercules and Romulus. After a while, my child was ready for a change in writing, which is easy to do. You can just swap stories in and out the book. But my child did get tired of the classical figures and the stories after a while. So keep that in mind. Another drawback is that this does not contain a full grammar program. Now, grammar is definitely present in it, but you will need to supplement grammar if you use this program. And since it only goes to days 3 and 4, it's really easy to add grammar like for your 5th day or for your 4th and 5th day. So let's move on to final thoughts. Okay. All right, guys. I know this is long, but I'm so detailed. I want you to know everything about this curriculum. Now, I absolutely love this curriculum. Kathy Duffy reviews. It's one of her top 103 curriculum picks for writing. I think it's wonderful. I think it's a great way to ease your child into writing. It's very um, it's very gentle, and I really like that. It's also very creative, and at the same time, as you move along, it gets a little bit technical with some things, but not is never formulaic at all. I think it's a nice balance between creativity, being interactive, and being comprehensive all at the same time. Okay. Um, However, there is teacher involvement. So, depending on what phase of life or season that you are in, you might want to consider how much of that you want to do. But remember, if you have older kids and you have a crazy life going on right now, your older children could definitely help your younger one with these books because it's really easy to teach the lessons. Is absolutely really easy, and an older child, a sibling, could definitely read a story to a child or have a child tell a story back to them or read a dictation passage. So if you really like the curriculum, you can really make it work for you and your family. So those are my final thoughts. I think this will be a great addition to your homeschool. I have all the books in the series, and I will be doing future videos on those, but hopefully a lot shorter. But I think you cannot go wrong if you get this curriculum. Okay, and just like that, we are at the end of this video and this epic adventure in the land of homeschool knockout. I hope you found some value in this. I believe in giving you as much information as possible. And remember, keep your pencil sharpened, your mind sharper, and never forget, in the ring of homeschooling, you are undefeated champions. I'll see you later. Bye-bye.